Nostramo, a world forgotten by the Emperor's first expeditions, hung in the void like a dying ember. Its sun, old and listless, cast little light. Permanent night cloaked its cities in an eternal shroud, and in that darkness, corruption flourished. Greed ruled where law should have, and cruelty thrived where hope had withered. In Nostramo, Quintus, the heart of this world, the strong fed upon the weak. Life was short, brutal, and cheap. Into this graveyard of morality, a star fell. They say he crashed through the crust itself, an ember from a distant fire, and from the crater arose a child, naked, broken, screaming against the dying winds. There were no witnesses to his arrival. No kindly arms to lift him from the ash, no scribes to record the moment history pivoted. Only the night and the child and the silence between. He grew alone, feral among the ruins and gutters, unseen by those who ruled from their ivory towers. He learned the ways of the city as an animal learns the snapping of traps, quickly, instinctively, desperately. Hunger carved him lean and hard. Cold honed his senses to razor points. His skin grew pale beneath Nostramo's shrouded sky, his hair as dark as the endless soot that fell with every breath. Even as a boy, he was haunted. Visions assailed him, images of blood, ruin, and desolation, futures that could not yet exist. He would wake in alleys slick with rain, trembling from nightmares so vivid that the screams of his victims echoed long after he opened his eyes. For these were no idle dreams. They were glimpses of what was to come. A galaxy convulsing in death throes, worlds burning, brothers betrayed. The child could no more escape these visions than he could escape his own shadow. He did not weep. He did not rage. He endured. In time, the city took notice. At first, it was a whisper, a rumor among the workers muttered over dying fires, tales of a ghost prowling the slums. Criminals, those petty tyrants who preyed upon the broken and the desperate, began to disappear. Thieves found hanged by their own entrails. Murderers gutted and left on the city steps, their blood pooled into shapes only half understood. Warnings written in the only language Nostramo spoke. Violence. The people gave him a name, Night Haunter. They spoke it with terror. Children were warned that misbehavior would summon him. Gangs told tales of comrades dragged into the black, their screams swallowed by the endless night. The enforcers, the mockery of law Nostramo maintained, searched, but they found nothing. Their fear rooted them deeper than any oath. The Night Haunter was everywhere and nowhere. His presence became a specter at every gathering, a hush that fell over every marketplace, a shadow on every guilty conscience. But he did not strike at random. No, the child who would become a monster had a purpose. He punished the guilty. In a world where crime was survival and cruelty was currency, this alone made him unique. He did not prey upon the weak. He did not take for himself. His hand fell only upon those who had harmed others, the abusers, the murderers, the liars who choked the city on their sins. His justice was brutal, final, and absolute. Fear became the city's new governor. Crime plummeted. Murders ceased. Even whispers of rebellion were drowned in terror. Men who had lived by the knife abandoned their trade, choosing to starve rather than risk attracting his wrath. Entire districts fell silent after nightfall. The ancient neon lights flickered on empty streets, watched only by unseen eyes. In time, the leaders of Nostramo Quintus came to a grim consensus. This Night Haunter, this predator among predators, could not be destroyed. He was a force of nature, an inevitable consequence of their own decadence. Better to accept him than to fight him. Better to bend the knee in terror than to die with a broken throat in a nameless alley. Thus, without crown or ceremony, without even a word exchanged, the Night Haunter became ruler of Nostramo. He took no throne. He demanded no titles. His authority was that of fear, and it needed no heraldry. Every edict was delivered by example. A corrupt foreman flayed and hung above his own factory, his crimes etched into his skin. A guildmaster who embezzled wages found crucified with molten metal poured down his throat. There was order, brutal, efficient, unyielding. The mines ran without rebellion. The cities prospered in silence. Nostramo, for the first time in centuries, knew peace, not from hope, but from the terror of consequences. Yet even then, the Night Haunter was not at peace. In the solitary hours between executions, he stared into the void and found only darkness staring back. His visions grew stronger, more insistent. He saw things no mortal should witness, entire legions falling to corruption, a father weeping for a dying empire, his own death at unseen hands. These were not dreams. They were certainties, wounds yet to bleed. He began to withdraw from the world he ruled. Where once he had stalked the alleys personally, now he watched from rooftops, cloaked in soot and sorrow. His decrees became less frequent but no less terrible. Those who dared think him grown complacent soon learned otherwise. Death could come on silent wings, without warning, without hope. The Night Haunter was no longer a boy avenging injustice. He had become something else, a living prophecy, a blade waiting to fall. Far across the stars, a golden figure turned his gaze toward the darkness, and Nostramo's doomed sun shivered beneath that unseen scrutiny. The time of stillness was ending. Forces greater than Nostramo's petty tyrants were stirring, and in the void, ships of fire and light began their long journey toward the black jewel of the night. The Night Haunter did not yet know it, but soon his true destiny would find him, and Nostramo would never be the same. The city never slept. It merely waited, holding its breath under the endless dark. From the highest spires of Nostramo Quintus to the crawling warrens that sank beneath its blackened streets, fear ruled every soul. And above them all, unseen but always present, the Night Haunter kept his silent vigil. There was no coronation, no declaration, no festival to honor the city's new master. There was only obedience, and the knowledge that any transgression, no matter how small, would be punished beyond imagining. From his unseen redoubt atop the shattered heights of the Palace District, the Night Haunter watched Nostramo remake itself beneath his cold, unblinking gaze. The mines, those yawning mouths that gnawed into the world's crust, ran without resistance. The foundries belched their smog into the already choked skies, their workers silent as cattle, too terrified even to murmur dissent. The enforcer gangs, once the hidden tyrants of the underhives, turned to ash in the fires of his justice. Their leaders were found gutted in their own dens, their blood painting messages no one dared misunderstand. Obey, endure, repent. Those who had once preyed upon the weak now clung to life like drowning men. Merchants tithed their earnings not to crime lords, but to public works. The Haunter demanded roads be repaired, aquifers purified, markets made safe. Teachers were raised from the gutter to instruct the young. Doctors were given free rein to heal the sick without charge or bribe. For those who lived humbly and worked honestly, life, while bleak, became bearable. Yet always the noose of fear tightened around every heart. Crime did not vanish. It evolved, learned to hide deeper, to whisper softer. But nowhere was safe from his gaze. It was said that the Night Haunter saw through the stones themselves, that he heard every lie, every theft, every unsanctioned blow struck in anger. Whether it was true mattered little. The belief alone was enough. At times, he made his justice public, dragging the guilty from their homes before the eyes of their neighbors. Other times, he was an invisible reaper. A man might go to sleep with a crime in his heart and never wake again. and woe betide any who tried to shield the condemned. Parents raised their children in terror of him, and yet, too, with gratitude. For the first time in living memory, a woman could walk the streets without fear of assault. A man could offer his wares without bribes and broken promises. The Night Haunter had imposed order by the only means Nostramo understood. Terror was their gospel now. Still, the Night Haunter knew that what he had created was not peace. Not truly. It was silence born of dread. A brittle, cracking thing, doomed the moment his vigilance faltered. The people obeyed him not out of love or loyalty, but because they had no choice. And in his heart, the Night Haunter loathed them for it. They had needed a monster to save them, and he had become it. It was during these long, sleepless watches, perched high above the city, listening to its every heartbeat, that the emissaries first came. Ships of impossible brilliance, cutting through Nostramo's polluted sky like daggers of light. The people panicked. Whole districts rioted and burned at the sight of the descending vessels, convinced that judgment had finally come. The planetary defense forces, such as they were, fired half-hearted salvos that vanished harmlessly against the ship's void shields. Resistance was meaningless. Even before the ramps extended and the figures descended, Nostramo knew it was conquered. The Night Haunter watched, unmoving, as the delegation approached. At their head strode giants, warriors clad in ceramite and gold, their faces hidden behind featureless helms. Around them, mortal envoys scurried, attempting to make themselves small in the shadow of these demigods. Heralds proclaimed names. Remembrancers, iterators, diplomats sent to parley. The Night Haunter did not answer. He descended instead into the heart of Nostramo Quintus, alone and without fanfare. Through the crumbling districts he moved, silent as thought. Citizens who glimpsed him flattened themselves against walls, wept or fainted outright. Mothers gathered children into their arms and dared not look upon him. Men and women froze like statues, praying to gods they had long since forsaken that the Night Haunter's gaze would pass over them. It did. He had no quarrel with them today. He came to the square of silent bells, the ancient center of the city where all proclamations were once made. Now the bells were rusted, silent, hollow. They watched mutely as the Night Haunter stepped from the shadows and made himself known. The envoys recoiled as he approached, sensing instinctively the predator behind his pale, haunted eyes. The warriors, the Emperor's own sons, held their ground, though their gauntlets tightened upon bolters and swords. One among them, a remembrancer named Val Tyron, stepped forward and bowed deeply. Val Tyron, voice trembling. "We come in peace. By order of the Emperor of mankind, we seek audience with the one called the Night Haunter." For a long moment, silence reigned. Then the Night Haunter spoke. His voice was a rasp, a death rattle bound in flesh. "Night Haunter, there is no peace here." He raised his gaze to the ships gleaming in the darkened sky. "Night Haunter, and your Emperor brings only the illusion of hope." Murmurs swept the mortal delegation, fear, confusion. Even the warriors exchanged glances, uncertain. But the leader of the giants, a figure bearing the sigil of the imperial Aquila wrought in black iron, stepped forward. He removed his helm, revealing a face carved from stern stone, untouched by fear. It was Malcador the Sigillite, the Emperor's own right hand. Malcador, calmly. "You are wrong, child. The Emperor offers not hope, but purpose." The Night Haunter's lip curled, half snarl, half smile. "Night Haunter, purpose? I have purpose enough. My world lives only because it fears me. Strip me from this place and Nostramo will devour itself anew." Malcador inclined his head, acknowledging the truth without granting victory. Malcador, "All the more reason for you to come with us. Your talents are wasted here. The galaxy cries out for a predator to hunt those who would defy the Imperium's law. The Night Haunter said nothing, but deep within his broken heart he recognized the inevitability of it. The visions had shown him this moment, shown him the chains of fate tightening around his throat, shown him the fires yet to come. Without another word, he turned from the delegation and began to walk toward the waiting ships, toward destiny, toward damnation. And Nostramo, cowed and silent, watched its only savior vanish into the night. The rain fell like needles. It slicked the broken streets of Nostramo Quintus, washing the endless soot into black rivers that twisted down gutters and into storm drains clogged with ash. Thunder rumbled across the ruined skyline, the crumbling spires silhouetted against fleeting flashes of lightning. In the heart of this storm, the Night Haunter waited. He stood alone atop the balcony of the derelict palace that once housed Nostramo's feeble government. His cloak, stitched from the skin of 1,000 criminals, billowed like a funeral shroud. Below him, the city sprawled, silent as a corpse. Above, in the churning heavens, the Emperor's ship descended. It was unlike anything Nostramo had ever seen. A colossus of burning light, vast enough to eclipse the battered moon. It split the roiling clouds with a lance of gold. Its engines howled with a sound that was not sound, a presence that beat against the walls of reality itself. The people fled in terror. They abandoned their homes, their hovels, their cathedrals of greed and despair. They cowered in basements and alleys, clutching their children and whispering prayers to gods they had long forgotten. Some knelt in the open streets, offering everything they had, what little that was, to the unseen powers descending upon them. The Night Haunter watched all of this with eyes like polished obsidian. He had known this moment would come. He had seen it again and again in the blood-soaked dreams that tore at his mind each night. The golden figure, the endless legions, the choice that was no choice at all. His every instinct screamed at him to flee, to melt into the ruins and vanish. But he remained, because fate once seen cannot be denied. With a sound like a falling star, the Emperor of Mankind descended from his ship. There were no trumpets, no cries of welcome, only the whisper of rain, the pounding of Nostramo's own guilty heartbeat. The Emperor was not merely a man. He was a force of nature, a sun bound into flesh, a god masquerading in golden armor. His presence pressed against the world, warping it, commanding it. Around him marched warriors clad in radiant plate, their faces hidden behind blank helms. Each bore the symbol of the imperial aquila upon their chest. But it was the Emperor alone who drew all light toward him. He walked with the inevitability of an approaching storm, each step echoing louder than the last. His cloak, spun from the dreams of mankind, trailed behind him in a wave of shimmering color. He came without weapons. He needed none. The Night Haunter descended from his perch. His bare feet struck the cracked stones with a soft hiss, his black-clawed hands curling reflexively. His mouth tasted ash and fear. His own, or Nostramo's, he could no longer tell. The two met in the center of the square of silent bells. The Emperor halted a few paces away, his golden gaze unreadable. The Night Haunter stared at him, and in that instant he fell into vision. Not a dream, not a nightmare, a certainty. He saw himself standing here as he did now, and he saw the endless road ahead. He saw betrayal, blood, a throne broken, a galaxy in flames. His own end, coming swift and silent at the hands of a shadow. The future crushed him in its jaws. He screamed. The sound tore from him like the rending of worlds. He fell to his knees, clawing at the stones until his fingers cracked and bled. His body convulsed, racked by images no mortal mind could endure. He saw his brothers. Some would burn with loyalty, others with treachery. He saw the Emperor, radiant and terrible, shackled to a throne of death. And he saw himself, alone, hunted, despised, dying not with honor but with bitter inevitability. He wept blood. The Emperor moved then, slow and deliberate. He knelt before the broken creature that had been born in the darkness of Nostramo and placed a hand, warm, impossibly gentle, upon the Night Haunter's bowed head. "Emperor," softly, "be at peace, my son. I have come to take you home." The Night Haunter shuddered. Home. The word struck him like a dagger. He had no home. He had been born in blood and shadow. He had been forged in the hatred of a world that should have never existed. What home could there be for a thing like him? Still, he raised his head. His eyes locked onto the Emperor's. And in that moment, something passed between them. An understanding deeper than words. The Night Haunter spoke. Night Haunter, voice raw. "I am not your son. I am Night Haunter, and I know full well what you intend." The Emperor's expression did not change. If he felt sorrow or pity or anger, he did not show it. "Emperor, you have seen much, Curze. Too much. But you are mine as you were always meant to be. You will stand with your brothers. You will bring order to the stars. You will be a blade in the darkness, striking terror into those who defy humanity's destiny." The Night Haunter staggered to his feet. The rain washed the blood from his face. His claws flexed at his sides. He could kill him. Here. Now end the future before it could devour them all. The thought flickered through him. A flash of rebellion, sharp and bright, but it guttered just as quickly. Futile, pointless. The future was already written. No action could change it. He bowed his head, not in surrender, in acceptance. Night Haunter. So be it. The Emperor rose as well. Together they turned toward the waiting ships, the waiting future, the waiting doom. The warriors of the Emperor's retinue parted to let them pass, their impassive helms betraying nothing of what they had witnessed. Nostramo's people, too, watched in silence from their hiding places, hearts hammering against rib cages like frantic drums. Their king, their savior, their monster, had been claimed by something even greater. The rain did not stop. It fell in sheets as the two figures ascended into the heavens, and Nostramo once again was left to its own darkness. The galaxy was vast beyond comprehension. It burned with the light of 1,000,000,000 stars, each orbited by forgotten worlds, feral kingdoms, lost colonies of humanity adrift in barbarism. It was a galaxy that needed to be conquered, cleansed, united. The Great Crusade was the Emperor's answer, a storm of fire and steel hurled outward from Terra to bind all of humanity under a single iron-handed rule. And now, among the Emperor's chosen sons, the Night Haunter had joined the fray. He was given command of the 8th Legion, a force already steeped in a reputation for ruthless suppression and remorseless efficiency. But under their true father's gaze, the Night Lords changed. They became something else entirely. No longer were they merely soldiers. They became executioners. The first campaigns were quiet ones, civilized worlds teetering on the brink of rebellion, principalities ruled by bloated aristocrats who imagined themselves immune to the Emperor's decree. The Night Lords did not come in shining banners and formal parades like the Ultramarines or the Lunar Wolves. They came with silence, with dread. At first, there was no sign of their approach. Communications would falter, power grids would fail, the stars themselves would seem to dim. And then, when panic began to gnaw at the edges of a planet's resolve, the Night Lords would strike. Low-orbit strikes first, thunderhawks descending like thunderbolts, killing lights in the sky. Then the ground assaults, mass landings of black-armored giants whose very presence shattered morale. They would not merely conquer, they would destroy the will to resist. Entire cities surrendered at the first sight of their banners, symbols of death stitched into black, borne by warriors who seemed more specter than man. And those who did not surrender, Those who dared to defy the Emperor's law, they were made examples of. On the world of Cryoptera, a planetary governor named Taran Vos refused compliance, claiming sovereignty by right of ancient bloodlines. The Night Haunter answered not with words but with demonstration. Vos Capital, a city of 2 million souls, was systematically dismantled. It began with whispers, patrols vanishing on the outskirts, communications failing without warning. Then the terror truly began. Night after night, the Night Lords hunted. They would take individuals at random, politicians, soldiers, civilians, and leave their bodies grotesquely displayed, hung from statues, splayed across government halls, arranged in intricate ritualistic patterns of death. Within a week, riots tore through Cryoptera. By the time the Night Haunter himself descended into the ruins of the governor's palace, Vos had already been lynched by his own people, driven to madness by a terror they could neither fight nor flee. The Night Lords left no administrator behind to oversee compliance. There was no need. Cryoptera would remember for generations what it meant to defy the Imperium. This was the way of the Night Lords. They did not seek glory nor conquest for conquest's sake. They sought fear. Fear was their weapon, sharper than any blade, faster than any bolter round. Fear could do in days what other legions took years to accomplish. And Konrad Curze, no longer merely the Night Haunter, but now a Primarch among brothers, wielded that weapon with terrible precision. Among his legion, a new doctrine arose, the cult of fear. Recruits from Nostramo, hardened by lives of brutality and suffering, flocked to the Eighth. They took to the Night Haunter's teachings with a zeal unmatched by any other, where the sons of Guilliman prized discipline and the sons of Russ valorized strength. The Night Lords honed fear into an art form. Armor was adorned with grotesque imagery, skull motifs, crimson lightning, the severed limbs of the fallen. Helmets were reshaped into snarling faces of demonic visage. Voxcasters were modified to emit inhuman wails and laughter across enemy communications. Psychological warfare was elevated to ritual. Every kill was a message, every massacre a sermon. Curze watched over it all in grim silence. It was not pride that stirred within him as he surveyed the atrocities carried out in his name. It was necessity. He understood better than any other Primarch that law without fear was fragile. Order without consequence was a lie. The galaxy would never be tamed by ideals alone. It must be cowed into obedience. And if that made him a monster in the eyes of his brothers, so be it. He did not seek their approval. In rare moments, the Night Lords fought alongside other legions. It was then that their methods sparked the greatest unease. At the Siege of Marax, the Salamanders and the Night Lords deployed side by side to crush a rebellious technocracy. Vulcan's sons fought with honor, offering surrender terms, treating prisoners with mercy. The Night Lords offered no quarter. Captured rebels were paraded before their comrades, tortured, dismembered, and left on the ramparts as trophies. Entire families were exterminated to ensure compliance. The Salamanders recoiled in horror. The Night Lords simply moved on, leaving terror in their wake. At campaign's end, while Vulcan personally oversaw the rebuilding of the ruined cities, Curze merely watched from afar, his arms folded across his chest. He knew how this story would end. Mercy bred defiance. Only fear endured. Within the ranks of the Imperium, rumors of the Night Lord's deeds began to circulate. Among civilians, they became legends, monsters that came at night, spirits that tore apart sinners with talons of steel. Among the legions, they became pariahs. It was said that where the Night Lords fought, entire cultures withered into terrified compliance or were extinguished entirely. Yet the Emperor did not rebuke his son. Not yet. For every world pacified, every rebellion crushed, every enemy broken, was another stone laid in the road of imperial unity. And for a time that was enough. The Night Haunter continued his vigil across the stars, dragging lightless justice into corners of the galaxy even his brothers feared to tread. But as his conquests multiplied, so too did the darkness within him. Each campaign stripped away another layer of restraint, another illusion of nobility. The Night Lords no longer fought to save mankind. They fought to punish it. And Konrad Curze, the pale king of a world drowned in night, led them onward with hollow eyes and blood-stained hands toward a future he had seen since the day he first fell from the sky. A future written in terror and death. Nostramo forgot him. Even as Konrad Curze carved terror into the galaxy, even as the Night Lords bled the stars into silence, his birthplace drifted back into rot. It began with whispers in the depths of the mines, rumors that the Night Haunter had abandoned them, that his vigilance, so sharp, so merciless, was spent now on distant worlds, and without his shadow overhead, the old ways returned. First, the petty criminals, gamblers, thieves, men who once trembled at every creak in the night, slipped from hiding. Then the guilds reformed, their bloated lords rising again to tax and bleed the workers dry. The enforcer gangs, long cowed, grew bolder, bartering protection in exchange for souls. Within a few years, Nostramo Quintus was a reflection of its old self, a grave of virtue, a kingdom of filth. Curze knew. From distant battlefields, his mind reached back to the streets of his youth. Through flickering Vox reports and intercepted astropathic signals, he saw the sickness fester. The people he had saved through terror had learned nothing. Without him, they were nothing. The Night Haunter brooded aboard his flagship, the Nightfall, his gauntlets carving deep furrows into the Iron Throne. Each transmission from Nostramo was another blade twisted into his ribs. Corruption, violence, the slow, suffocating spread of humanity's worst instincts. His legion tried to distract him. They brought him trophies, skinned rebel generals, shattered planetary charters, the broken standards of defiant worlds. They offered victories, blood price payments on the ledger of his wrath. It was not enough. Nothing could cleanse the stench of Nostramo's betrayal. Captain Sevatar, the first captain of the Atramentar, dared once to speak plainly. Sevatar, the mongrels revert to form, Lord. That is their nature. It is not yours to change. But Curze said nothing. In his heart, he had always known it would end like this. In the visions that gnawed his dreams, Nostramo's grave was already dug. Still, knowledge did not lessen the wound. The final confirmation came in the form of a dead legionary. A patrol returned from Nostramo bearing the battered body of Brother Varian. He had gone home seeking recruits among the youth, and instead found only betrayal. Ambushed by street gangs wielding stolen weapons, he had been butchered in an alley no wider than a corridor. They had stripped him of his armor, paraded it through the streets like a trophy. An Astartes, reduced to a prize for scum. Curze stared at Varian's body for a long time. He saw in it the final death of his dream, the dream that Nostramo could be saved. Something in him broke. Without summoning council, without mustering ceremony, he gave the order. The fleet turned toward home. The journey was silent. Every Night Lord aboard the Nightfall felt it, the shift in the air, the gravity of impending doom. There were no boasts, no oaths of vengeance, only a stillness, thick and suffocating, as if the ship itself held its breath. When they broke warp, Nostramo hung before them, black and brooding, its cities flickering with the faint luminescence of a people who had forgotten their terror. Curze did not order an assault. He did not deploy troops, nor send threats down to the planetary governors. Instead, he walked alone onto the bridge, clad in his war plate, a relic of darker years. The lightning patterns crackled across his armor, and his eyes burned cold. Without a word, he approached the firing consoles. The weapons officers, a mortal crew bred for obedience, trembled under his gaze. He reached out a clawed hand and entered the sequence himself. Coordinates locked, firing solutions calculated. He selected the core of Nostramo Quintus first, his birthplace, the heart of the decay. The main plasma batteries of the Nightfall awoke with a scream. From orbit, a burning lance of energy plunged down through the black clouds, slicing through atmosphere and stone like a god's finger of judgment. It struck the planetary crust, deep and merciless. The planet shuddered. Seams spiderwebbed across the surface, splitting entire cities in half. Towers toppled like broken teeth. The sky lit with firestorms. Again, Curze fired again, and again. With each blast, the world buckled, the ground splitting open to reveal the bleeding wounds of a dying planet. Deep within the mines, the ancient pressures long held in check gave way. The crust cracked, and the core itself began to collapse inward. Nostramo wept molten blood. Cities drowned in oceans of lava. Entire populations screamed into the void as their homes were vaporized. The cries of the dying rose up in a chorus that only Curze could hear. He listened to it all, without joy, without sorrow, only inevitability. As the core destabilized, gravitational tides tore the planet apart. The last transmission from Nostramo was a single, endless wail, half static, half human, before it was silenced forever. The Nightfall hung silent in orbit, watching as the black jewel of Nostramo cracked, bled, and died. Chunks of continent-sized debris spiraled into space, glowing like embers in the dark. The world was gone. The dream was gone. Only the nightmare remained. Konrad Curze turned from the viewport. For the first time since his discovery by the Emperor, he spoke to his legion. Curze, you have no home now, no fathers, no mothers, only the night, only the hunt. The Night Lords bowed their heads, not in mourning, in acceptance. From that moment forward, they were what Curze had always feared they would become. Predators without tether, executioners without mercy. The 8th Legion shed the last vestiges of honor, of purpose, of hope. They became pure reflections of their Primarch's broken soul. Across the stars, the Imperium would feel the change. No longer did the Night Lords conquer to unify. They conquered to punish, to bleed, to destroy. Their creed was written in the ashes of Nostramo. And in the long, cold dark between worlds, the Night Haunter smiled, a thin, broken thing without warmth or light. The galaxy had lost its last chance at redemption, and now only terror remained. The stars grew colder. The nightfall drifted in the void, a black blade lost among dying suns, her hull scarred by 1,000 battles, a ship without home, a fleet without master, a legion without purpose. Konrad Curze stood alone upon the observation deck. The ruins of Nostramo still clung to him, the memory of a dying world tearing itself apart under the fury of his guns. It had not sated him. It had not silenced the visions. If anything, they burned brighter now, relentless and cruel. Across the stars, the Imperium continued its march. The Emperor, enthroned in distant terror, praised the banners of compliance raised over blood-soaked worlds. He spoke of unity, of enlightenment, of a destiny mankind would grasp with clean, shining hands. Curze knew better. He had walked the alleys of humanity's heart. He had smelled the rot. The Great Crusade was not a journey toward salvation. It was a tightening noose, binding a species that deserved only judgment. Every planet pacified, every rebellion crushed, every citizen cowed into obedience. None of it changed what lurked beneath the skin. Mankind was a disease, and Curze had long ago accepted that he was the cure. So when the first whispers came, sent through hidden channels, carried by emissaries cloaked in shadow, he listened. They spoke of Horus, the War Master, beloved son of the Emperor, greatest of the Primarchs. Horus, who now dared to question the Master's design, who saw the same sickness Curze did, festering beneath the Emperor's golden lies. They did not come openly. No one did. The early days of rebellion were woven with silk, not iron. Oaths were sworn, not with banners unfurled, but with glances, nods, careful omissions. Curze received the envoy alone, a single figure clad in the colors of the lunar wolves, bearing no insignia, no name. Envoy softly, "My Lord Curze, the War Master extends a hand to you." Curze said nothing. His eyes, black pits gleaming in the half-light, pierced through the diplomat's soul. "Envoy, he knows your wisdom. He knows the price you have paid for seeing the truth." Still, Curze did not speak. The envoy swallowed, pressing on. "Envoy, the Emperor has abandoned us. He binds us with laws he himself will not obey. He demands obedience without offering understanding. The War Master would see a new order rise, one that rewards strength, one that accepts what humanity truly is." The words stirred something ancient within Curze, something bitter, something hungry. He stepped forward, slow as the coming of a storm. Curze, voice like iron dragged over stone. "I have seen what comes. It cannot be stopped, only hastened." The envoy trembled under his gaze. Curze smiled. It was not a human expression. It was the smile of a predator who had found worthy prey. Without ceremony, without fanfare, the Night Haunter gave his answer. The Night Lords would turn. They would join the War Master's rebellion. Not for promises of power, not for glory, not even for vengeance, but because it was inevitable, because the Imperium deserved to burn. The days that followed were a grim procession of preparations. The fleet rearmed, restocked, reoriented. Communications were severed with Imperial command structures. Worlds once pacified were abandoned or scoured. Loyalist agents embedded within the Legion were rooted out and slain, some dragged screaming into the void, others executed before their peers as warnings. The Night Lords did not mourn the severing of their last ties to the Imperium. Many welcomed it. They had always been outsiders, feared, reviled. Now they would embrace the roles assigned to them, no longer hypocrites clad in the armor of angels. Now, openly, they would be the galaxy's nightmare. In secret convocation aboard the Nightfall, Curze gathered his captains, Sevatar, Talos, Jago Sevatarian, Vandred, veterans of 1,000 campaigns, blood-slicked and pitiless. They knelt before him, not in fealty, but in understanding. Curze, addressing them, "The Emperor builds monuments atop corpses. His dream is a lie, his empire a tomb." He paced among them, his voice a low growl. "Curze, we are not his tools, we are not his bastards. We are what the galaxy made us, what it deserves." He paused, glancing at the void beyond the viewports. "Curze, swear yourselves to the truth, to death, to fear." One by one, the captain spoke. Not oaths to Horus, not oaths to chaos, oaths to vengeance, oaths to honesty, the honesty of the blade, the honesty of terror. When the convocation ended, the fate of the Night Lords was sealed. They would be traitors, outlaws, monsters, not because they had fallen, but because they had been born for it. The first act of their new allegiance came swiftly. The Nightfall turned toward the shipping lanes of the eastern fringe. Merchant convoys bearing supplies to Imperial expeditionary fleets vanished into the void without a trace. Entire garrison outposts were found gutted, their commanders crucified on shattered battlements. Colonial settlements awoke to find their leaders flayed alive, their cities painted in blood. Each atrocity was a message. The Night Lords no longer wore the Emperor's leash. Fear, once tempered by duty, was now given free rein. Sevatar, ever the bluntest of Curze's lieutenants, took savage delight in the change. On the world of Cyrak Prime, he personally led a raid into the planetary governor's palace, slaughtering the guards and carving his name into the flesh of the governor himself before casting the broken corpse from the spires. Talos, darker and colder, moved from system to system like a phantom, orchestrating terror campaigns so intricate that entire populations committed mass suicide rather than face the Night Lords in battle. And Curze simply watched. He stood atop the Nightfall's bridge, staring into the tides of stars, listening to the distant echoes of screams. There was no regret in him, no sorrow, only certainty. He had seen the future. The galaxy would drown in blood, whether by his hand or another's. Better then that it die honestly. Better that humanity look into the abyss and see its true reflection before the end. In the shadows of the Great Crusade, a darker crusade was born, not of hope, but of terror. And at its head, the Night Haunter smiled into the endless night, knowing that at last he had embraced what he was always meant to be. The executioner, the monster, the truth. The galaxy bled. Where once the banners of the Emperor marched unchallenged, now the skies themselves seemed to tear open in rebellion. Worlds that had sworn oaths of loyalty, centuries past, now shuddered under the boots of traitors. Brother turned upon brother, blade against blade, oath against oath. In this maelstrom of betrayal, the Night Lords thrived. They did not seek glory. They did not conquer in Horus's name out of love nor loyalty. They hunted because the hunt was all they had left. With Nostramo's ashes still clinging to their armor, the Night Lords became a plague across the void, descending upon loyalist forces with the precision of executioners and the savagery of beasts. Their first major prey, the Raven Guard. On the distant moons of Zephon and the ruins of Karael's Belt, the loyalist legions rallied, desperate to stem the tide of darkness. It was there that the Night Lords began their massacre. It started, as always, with the lights going out. Astropathic beacons fell silent. Communications dissolved into static, laced with cruel laughter. Star charts twisted themselves into lies. By the time the Raven Guard realized they were isolated, it was already too late. The first assault came under the cover of artificial eclipses, vast fields of debris cast into orbit to blot out suns, plunging entire battlefields into unnatural twilight. From that shrouded sky, the Night Lords struck. Thunderhawks, black as midnight, roared through the darkness, disgorging squads of murderers clad in armor, daubed with crimson lightning and corpse paint visages. They did not march in formation. They came as nightmares, scattering, slipping through cracks in loyalist defenses, appearing behind lines that should have been secure. Where the Raven Guard fought with discipline, with speed and stealth, the Night Lords answered with terror. On Zephon, the 217th Raven Guard cohort made their stand within the fortified Bastion of Dawn. For 3 nights they held, repelling probing attacks and sabotage attempts, confident in their defenses. On the 4th night, the walls themselves screamed. Breach points, long thought secure, erupted inward as Night Lords, their armor laden with the bones of previous victims, poured through. Vox channels dissolved into shrieks and begging. The Night Haunter himself was not present. He did not need to be. His captains knew their work well. Sevatar led the charge through the main gates, his glaive flashing like a comet as he reaped loyalist lives without mercy. Talos, dark-eyed and silent, orchestrated a network of hidden mines and snipers that turned retreat into slaughter. Vandred, mad even by the standards of his kin, unleashed virus bombs among the supply depots, incinerating munitions and men alike in firestorms of green, clinging flame. Within hours, the Bastion of Dawn was reduced to a charnel house, but the Night Lords did not stop with victory. They herded the survivors, those few broken warriors who had managed to surrender, into the shattered central plaza. There, under the broken statues of heroes past, the Night Lords staged their grand performance. One by one, the Raven Guard were executed, not cleanly but with artistry. Some were impaled upon the wreckage of their own war machines. Others were flayed alive, their skins stitched into banners that fluttered in the ash-choked wind. A message, not just to the Raven Guard, to the galaxy. This is what loyalty earned you. This is what the Imperium could not protect you from. Across Karael's belt, the pattern repeated. Convoys vanished into the black. Reinforcements arrived at empty landing zones, their transports dissected mid-flight by torpedo salvos that left no survivors. On the mining colony of Varduk's Fall, the Night Lords spent an entire week stalking a single company of salamanders, playing with them, bleeding them, allowing hope to flicker before extinguishing it with precision. They fought not for territory, not even for strategic value. They fought to unmake morale. They fought to turn light into despair. Sevatar once said it best, standing knee-deep in the blood-slick corridors of a broken Raven Guard frigate. Sevatar, laughing. Why kill a man's body when you can murder his soul? And yet, not even among the traitors were the Night Lords trusted. The word-bearers found their methods crude. The Iron Warriors called them unpredictable. The sons of Horus, pragmatic as they were, preferred tools that could be relied upon, not wild beasts loosed upon the stars. But Horus tolerated them. Because they were effective, because where the Night Lords passed, resistance withered like crops before flame. Because fear, once unleashed, spread faster than any contagion. Curze himself moved like a shadow across these war fronts. He did not lead massed assaults. He chose his targets carefully, officers, strategists, leaders whose deaths would leave their forces blind and stumbling. He killed with surgical precision, leaving bloody symbols on the walls of their bunkers, arcane warnings, promises of worse to come. The Emperor's name grew bitter in the mouths of those few loyalists who survived encounters with the 8th Legion. They did not speak of victories. They spoke of waking to find their commanders dismembered, of finding brothers missing in the night, their armor left behind, blood pooling into cryptic shapes, of hearing laughter on the Vox before systems crashed forever into silence. They spoke of the Night Lords and the terror they carried like a plague. As the heresy deepened, as the Emperor's throne world grew more besieged, the Night Lords grew bolder. They no longer hid in shadows. They made spectacles of their cruelty. On the shrine world of Iquada Prime, they desecrated sacred cathedrals, dragging priests through the streets in chains before disemboweling them on the altar stones. On the void fortress of Hecatomb Deep, they rigged entire decks with explosives, triggering detonations timed precisely to the arrival of loyalist reinforcements, turning rescue missions into mass graves. There was no mercy, no second chances, only the slow, inexorable grinding down of humanity's hope. In time, even hardened veterans of the Ultramarines and the Imperial Fists began to flinch at the sight of black armor etched with crimson bolts. Even battle-hardened Astartes, warriors without fear, found their dreams haunted by whispers in the dark. The Night Lords had fulfilled their father's vision. They had become terror incarnate, not soldiers, not heroes, predators, executioners, harbingers of the death of dreams. And as the flames of rebellion spread across the stars, Konrad Curze watched from the shadows, silent and unseen, and knew this was only the beginning. The Thramas sector had always been a wound upon the galaxy, A place of dying stars and orphan worlds, its people eked out brittle lives under skies choked with radiation storms. A forgotten frontier, a graveyard waiting to be filled. When the Horus Heresy shattered the Imperium's fragile order, the Thramas sector became more than a graveyard. It became a crucible, and into it the Night Lords descended. Konrad Curze chose Thramas not out of strategy, but instinct. It was a place of shadows, a place where light had never truly ruled. Perfect. Here, in the ruins of dying civilizations, he would shape terror into a weapon sharp enough to gut the Emperor's grand dream. The Night Lords came as a storm of darkness. Hive cities, already hollowed by generations of poverty and war, crumbled under their assaults. Industries were torched. Population centers were bombed into dust. Those who survived were left to starve, to fear, to turn on one another. It was not conquest, it was annihilation. Curze understood that the Imperium could endure military defeat. But terror, hopelessness, those things rotted from within. In Thramas, he would test whether even the Emperor's design could survive the collapse of spirit. But he was not unopposed. The Dark Angels came. The First Legion, sons of Caliban, armored in bone white and midnight black, entered Thramas with the precision of a surgeon and the fury of a wildfire. At their head, Lion L. Johnson, the Lion, master tactician, predator without equal. He saw at once what Curze intended. He understood, perhaps better than any of his brothers, that the Night Haunter was not waging war in the traditional sense. He was unraveling hope itself, and the Lion would not allow it. The Thramas crusade had begun. It was unlike any war fought in the Heresy. There were no grand engagements, no sweeping formations. It was a campaign of knives in the dark. Assassination, sabotage, psychological warfare, a dance of predators. The Lion adapted swiftly. He split his forces into hunter-killer packs, scattered across dozens of systems, moving unpredictably to cut off Night Lords' raiding parties before they could escape. He baited traps within traps, using feigned weakness to lure Curze's forces into exposed ambushes. At first, it worked. Night Lords' vessels, so accustomed to operating without opposition, found themselves crippled and burning in the void. Strike cruisers were caught between converging Dark Angels flotillas, forced into desperate boarding actions they could not win. On the ash wastes of Daku's Rest, an entire Night Lords company was annihilated when Lion's Terminators struck from underground tunnels they themselves had seeded months before. But Curze was no fool. He understood the Lion's mind. More than that, he respected it. This was not Guilliman with his tedious rulebooks. This was not Dorn with his fortress walls and stubborn pride. This was a hunter, a worthy enemy. And so the Night Haunter changed his tactics. The Thramas campaign grew bloodier, more personal. Night after night, Dark Angels found their staging grounds infiltrated, their generals abducted, their astropaths silenced. Entire battle groups would arrive at mustering points, only to find the system dead. Planets bombarded to bedrock, space stations adrift with corpses, frozen against shattered viewports. In return, the Lion's vengeance grew colder, sharper. Where once the Dark Angels offered surrender terms, now they came only to kill. Captured Night Lords were not imprisoned. They were executed without ceremony. The Lion's wrath was not born of rage, but of grim necessity. He understood now. Curze could not be broken, only ended. The two Primarchs clashed again and again across the broken worlds of Thramas. Never in open battle, always in the dark, always in blood. On the jungle moon of Saphira IV, they crossed blades among the steaming vines, their duel shattering ancient ruins left by civilizations long extinct. Curze fought with a savage, unpredictable fury, his blows coming at angles no human warrior could anticipate. The lion answered with disciplined brutality, each strike calculated to cripple, to kill. They fought for hours, neither gaining the advantage, the storm of their battle visible from orbit as a roiling tempest. When at last they broke apart, both bleeding, both exhausted, the world itself burned beneath them. Neither Primarch spoke. There were no insults, no boasts, only mutual recognition. Two killers shaped by different philosophies, yet bound by the same grim inevitability. Neither would relent. And so the war dragged on. Entire systems died between them. The Thramas sector became a wasteland of shattered planets and broken fleets. Civilian populations were caught in the crossfire, annihilated without pity. By the campaign's third year, the only law in Thramas was death. Both legions paid a price. The Night Lords' numbers dwindled, attrition bleeding them dry, their fractured command structure causing warbands to act increasingly independently, with some descending into chaos and madness. The Dark Angels, too, suffered. Veteran companies ground down to ruin. Void ships, irreplaceable, lost to ambushes and sabotage. The Lion himself grew grimmer, more ruthless. He ceased to trust even his own advisors, seeing betrayal in every shadow. And Curze watched it all unfold with the cold satisfaction of a man vindicated. He had not come to Thramas to win. He had come to destroy. The Lion could kill him. He could exterminate the Night Lords to the last Astartes. It would not matter. The damage was done. Hope was dead here. The Thramas crusade ended not with a final battle, but with exhaustion. The Dark Angels received new orders, summoned by the tide of war surging toward Terra itself. The Lion turned his fleets away, abandoning the ashes of Thramas to rot. Curze did not pursue. He remained among the dead worlds, his legion fractured and bleeding, but still alive, still dangerous. In the ruins of the sector, he whispered to the stars. He spoke of endings, of fates sealed by blood. He had seen this moment long before the first blade was drawn. It had been written into the marrow of his bones, carved into the architecture of the galaxy itself. The Night Lords would not survive as a legion. They would fracture. They would become raiders, pirates, murderers. But they would never be forgotten. Fear would be their legacy. And in that, Konrad Curze found the only victory that mattered. The Lion had left Thramas behind, but the darkness Curze unleashed there would stain the stars forever. The Night Lords were bleeding. The Thramas crusade had left them battered, scattered across the void like broken teeth. Ships limped through the blackness with half their systems burning, holds filled with the wounded and the mad. The dreams of order were ash. The dream of vengeance still burned. But Curze was not yet finished. Even amid defeat, he sought opportunity, not for glory, not for conquest, but for the final mutilation of hope. And so his gaze fell upon a distant, forgotten jewel, Sotha, a green world adrift at the far edge of Ultramar's empire, unremarkable, insignificant. Or so it seemed. But Sotha was more than jungle and ruin. It housed the Pharos, a Xenos construct older than mankind's first steps into the stars, hidden deep within Mount Pharos itself. A beacon, a weapon, a secret the 13th Legion guarded jealously. If seized, the Pharos could tip the scales. If destroyed, it would blind the Imperium across entire sectors. Curze saw it clearly. He ordered the attack. The battered remnants of the 8th Legion, still smoldering from their war with the Dark Angels, gathered in silence. No grand speeches were given, no promises of triumph. Only a simple command relayed from the Night Haunter himself. Curze, coldly. Cut out their eyes. Burn their hope. Let them choke in the dark. The Night Lords descended upon Sotha with the fury of cornered beasts. Thunderhawks raked the skies, vomiting fire upon the planet's meager defenses. Strike cruisers hammered orbital platforms into scrap. In the rain-soaked jungles, drop pods screamed downward, burying themselves deep into the steaming mud. At first, Sotha's defenders stood firm. Militia regiments, humble men with autoguns and grit, fought with desperate courage. The Ultramarines' garrison, though small, was seasoned, hardened by decades of watchful duty. They rallied around the Pharaohs, digging in atop Mount Pharos slopes, preparing to hold the beacon against the tide. They knew the Night Lords would come. They did not know how swiftly despair would follow. The first night, the outlying settlements vanished. Villages left empty except for blood-stained floors, and messages daubed in gore across walls. You were abandoned. There is no light. The night is all. Panic spread like wildfire. Entire battalions broke formation, deserting their posts, seeking shelter in the tangled jungles where Night Lords hunted them like wolves among sheep. The Ultramarines fought to restore order. They failed. The Night Lords bled them from 1,000 cuts. Sabotage teams crippled power relays, plunging defenses into chaos. Snipers picked off officers in the dead of night, their deaths staged in grotesque tableaus for the survivors to find. Vox channels crackled with mockery, taunts whispered in familiar voices, screams layered under static. Fear gnawed at discipline faster than any blade. Captain Cassiel, commander of the Ultramarines garrison, stood unbowed. He gathered his surviving companies atop Mount Pharos, swearing oaths upon the Emperor's name to hold until death. His men answered. They did not realize the death had already begun. On the second night, the Pharos itself was attacked. Night Lords infiltrated through ventilation shafts, maintenance tunnels, forgotten catacombs buried beneath the mountain. Silent as smoke, they slipped into the Pharos' heart. The first warning came when the primary reactor chamber fell dark. Backup generators screamed into life, then were cut a moment later, one after another, each severed by unseen blades. By the time Captain Cassiel rallied his warriors, the Night Lords were inside the fortress. They came not in orderly ranks, but as wraiths, kill teams of Atramentar Terminators in Baroque black armor, each a nightmare wrought in iron. The corridors became charnel houses. Gunfire lit the halls like brief, terrible suns. Bolter rounds tore bodies apart at point-blank range. Chain blades howled. But for every Night Lord slain, 3 loyalists fell. Talos, the Soul Hunter, led the assault through the generator levels, carving a bloody path toward the Pharos core. His voice, cold and unhurried, echoed through the darkness. Talos, there is no rescue coming. Your gods have abandoned you. Kneel and you might die quickly. None knelt. The Ultramarines fought like lions, holding choke points, rigging kill zones, sacrificing themselves to slow the invaders' advance. They bled for every meter, but they bled too fast. Outside, the storm worsened. Night Lords' drop ships landed fresh squads under cover of torrential rains, reinforcing the push toward the mountain's peak. Lightning revealed glimpses of the battlefield, armor painted in the blood of the fallen, banners torn to shreds, the Pharos itself looming like a wounded titan against the flashing sky. And then, in the midst of this slaughter, salvation arrived. The Dark Angels. The Lion had not abandoned the sector as completely as Curze had believed. A detachment of the First Legion, hunting the Night Lords across the void, had tracked their prey to Sotha. They struck without warning, teleported directly into the heart of the conflict. They fell upon the Night Lords like a sword from the heavens. Ebony and ivory clashed in the ruins of the Pharos. Where the Night Lords fought with hatred and cruelty, the Dark Angels fought with the cold, methodical fury of a master executioner. Talos's advance was halted. Atramentar units were isolated and destroyed. Outside, Night Lord's gunships were torn from the skies by precise Dark Angel's fire. The tide turned, but it was no clean victory. The damage had already been done. The Pharaohs, though defended, had suffered sabotage beyond simple repair. Entire systems were corrupted, data cores lost, functions crippled. The beacon's light, once a guiding star across the void, guttered and flickered, its range halved, its power uncertain. The Emperor's reach had been dimmed. The Night Lords had not captured the Pharaohs, but they had broken it, and they had broken Sotha. In the end, Curze did not weep for the failure. He had not needed triumph. He had needed only to wound. As the Night Lords retreated into the blackness, leaving wreckage and ash in their wake, they knew they had done what they came for. They had made the Imperium bleed in a way no simple massacre could achieve. They had stolen its sight, its certainty, its hope. On the ruined slopes of Mount Pharos, amid the dead and the dying, Captain Cassiel knelt, blood streaming from a dozen wounds, and gazed up at the broken beacon, flickering weakly against the night. And he understood. This was the new war. Not a war of victories and banners, a war of attrition, a war of despair. A war the Night Lords were born to win. The stars stretched thin. In the cold dark beyond Sotha, where the void grew old and thin, the lion hunted. The Night Lords were broken, their fleets in tatters, their strength spent. This was the lion's moment. The Dark Angels gathered their might aboard the Invincible Reason, the flagship of their legion, a fortress ship of impossible scale, miles of armored plating, gun batteries that could level continents, void shields strong enough to weather the fury of dying suns. Here, in the lion's hand, final judgment would be delivered. He would find Curze. He would end the Night Haunter's reign of terror, and the galaxy would be one step closer to salvation. The lion's scouts tracked the nightfall limping across the void, bleeding atmosphere and wreckage like a wounded beast. The trap was set. Squadrons of Dark Angel ships closed around it like a noose. Boarding pods, gunships, and teleport strikes converged in a killing storm. The Nightfall fought viciously, fought as only the desperate can, but the outcome was never in doubt. Its hull was breached, its systems crippled, and at last, battered and broken, it was dragged toward the gravity wells of the Invincible Reason. Konrad Curze was captured. Bound in chains forged from the heart of dying stars, wrapped in gravitic fields and psychic suppression fields, he was dragged onto the Lion's flagship under the watchful eyes of 100 custodians and Astartes. No one spoke. There was no need. Victory had already been declared. The Night Haunter, terror of 1,000 worlds, the shadow that haunted the Imperium's dreams, was in chains. Curze did not resist. He moved with the sluggish inevitability of a condemned man, his head bowed, his body broken from a dozen wounds sustained during the boarding actions. The lion himself came to stand over him, clad in black and bone, his blade sheathed across his back. L. Johnson stared at his brother without triumph. There was no joy in his eyes, only cold necessity. Lionel Johnson, it didn't have to end like this, Curze. Curze raised his head. His eyes gleamed with a terrible, hollow amusement. Konrad Curze, it always had to end like this. The lion turned away. He had no patience for riddles. He gave the order. Confine the Night Haunter to the deepest cells of the Invincible Reason, to be judged at Terra alongside Horus and the other traitors. The lion believed the war was ending. He believed the darkness had been caged. He was wrong. The Invincible Reason sailed onward, carrying its precious cargo deep into the void. The Dark Angels returned to their duties, repairs, patrols, planning the next assault. Confidence returned. They believed the threat was over. But Konrad Curze had not been broken. He had been waiting for the darkness. It came on the 7th night. The ship's lights flickered. Subtle at first, a failed lumen strip here, a glitching auspex there. Whispers filled the corridors, whispers in voices thought dead, calling names no one had spoken aloud in decades. Doors jammed, communications hissed with static. The crew grew uneasy. And then the murders began. It started in the lower decks. A maintenance team found butchered, their bodies arranged in obscene mockeries of imperial crests. Then a squad of serfs vanished during a routine patrol, later found stripped of skin, their remains nailed to the ceiling above the main mess hall. At first, the officers suspected a Night Lord's boarding party, some remnant that had escaped detection. Hunt teams were dispatched, security doubled, decks were sealed. But the killings continued, always just beyond reach, always a step ahead. A dread realization began to settle among the Dark Angels. There was no boarding party, there was only him. Curze had escaped. How, none could say. The chains were shattered, the psychic barriers torn apart from within by a force no one had anticipated. The Night Haunter had been unleashed inside the Invincible Reason, and in the endless steel labyrinth of the fortress ship, he was unstoppable. He hunted as he had once hunted on Nostramo. Silent, relentless, inevitable. Entire sections of the ship went dark, vox channels filled with distorted laughter. Servitors, driven mad by viruses implanted into their wetware, attacked their masters without warning. The ship's machine spirit howled in confusion, unable to distinguish friend from foe. The Lion ordered a full sweep. He led the assault himself, stalking the decks with his honor guard, his blade bared and burning with righteous fury. He would find his brother. He would end this madness. But the Invincible Reason was vast, an endless maze of corridors, chambers, forgotten vaults, and Curze knew it now better than any cartographer. He struck at the edges, picking off isolated squads, sowing panic, bleeding the ship dry. The Lion realized too late that he was not hunting Curze. Curze was hunting him. On the 13th night they met, in the cooling halls of the main reactor core, where the heart of the Invincible Reason beat slow and thunderous. The Lion came with a full strike force. Curze stood alone. He was a ruin of a man, his armor cracked and stained with dried blood, his flesh a tapestry of wounds. Yet he smiled, a thin, awful thing. Konrad Curze, whispering, "Welcome to the truth, brother." Before the Lion could give the order to fire, the traps were sprung. Explosives, seeded into the support columns during Curze's unseen rampage, detonated in a chain reaction. The deck buckled. Whole sections of the strike force were buried under tons of falling steel. In the chaos, Curze moved, a blur of death. He struck with talons sharp enough to cleave ceramite like parchment, rending through the Dark Angels with surgical precision. The Lion fought his way toward him, roaring challenges into the smoke. But Curze melted into the ruins, always just beyond reach. The Night Haunter did not seek open battle. He sought terror, and he had already won. The Invincible Reason was crippled, its decks ran red, its defenders lived in constant fear, jumping at every flicker of shadow, every creak of metal. The ship pressed on through the void, still carrying its cargo toward Terra. But the Lion understood now. They were not the hunters, they were the hunted. And in every darkened corner, every flickering lumen, every breath of cold air, Konrad Curze watched, waiting, smiling. For the nightmare had only just begun. The Night Lords did not die clean. They did not end with a last charge, a last stand, a hero's fall. They frayed apart like a nightmare stretching into endless night. But even in their death throes, they bled terror. And nowhere was that more clear than on Macraga, the jewel of Ultramar. Guilliman's fortress world, a bastion of order and civilization, where gleaming white cities crowned lush continents, where the banners of the Imperium flew unmarred by the blood of rebellion. Macragge was everything Konrad Curze despised: its shining spires, its proud citizens, its faith in laws and dreams, lies, every one of them. Built atop bones and blindness, it was not enough to break worlds like Sotha, to shatter the fringes of the Imperium. The heart had to bleed. The Night Haunter, silent and unseen aboard the crippled Invincible Reason, planned his final sermon. A message the Imperium would never forget. The Night Lords gathered, scattered remnants from shattered fleets and bleeding warbands, converging like crows to a corpse. They came not as an army, but as a contagion. No grand fleets darkened Macragge's skies. No formal declarations of war were issued. The Night Lords simply appeared, everywhere, all at once. Saboteurs seeded among merchant convoys. Assassins infiltrated noble houses, slipping through kitchens and servant halls like phantoms. Hidden kill cults activated, agents long planted within the lower hives, waiting for a signal that finally came. The first blow fell at midnight. The orbital docks, pride of Guilliman's rebuilding efforts, erupted into flame. Explosions shivered up the docking pylons, snapping battleships from their moorings and sending them crashing into each other in ruinous fireballs. Thousands died in minutes. Panic swept the upper atmosphere. Civilian traffic jammed evacuation corridors. Gunships scrambled to impose order, only to be ambushed by boarding parties who had disguised themselves as refugees. On the ground, the horror was worse. Cities descended into chaos. Power grids failed. Vox networks howled with screams before falling into dead silence. Civic centers, symbols of Ultramar's pride, became slaughterhouses. The Night Lords emerged from hiding, armored in black and crimson, hunting without mercy. They did not strike military targets alone. They dragged judges from their benches. They razed libraries. They turned hospitals into killing grounds. No symbol of order was spared. The loyalist defenders rallied. Ultramarines, militia regiments, enforcer battalions. They fought with the disciplined fury their Primarch had taught them. But they fought an enemy that was already inside the walls, already gnawing at the roots. The Night Lords had planned this well. It was not a battle. It was an infection. In the Grand Forum of Magna Macragge Civitas, where statues of the Emperor and Guilliman towered over marble squares, the Night Lords staged their masterpiece. Capturing thousands of civilians, they herded them into the square at gunpoint. They forced them to kneel before the great statues, and there, beneath the gaze of their gods, they were butchered. Systematically, efficiently. Blood ran like rivers between the stones, pooling at the feet of the Emperor's likeness. The message was clear. Your laws cannot protect you. Your dreams are dust. Your gods are dead. Konrad Curze himself walked among the carnage, unseen, untouched, a ghost in the heart of the Imperium's pride. He made no speeches. He carved no manifestos into the stone. His work spoke for itself. He passed through burning cathedrals and toppled palaces, watching, listening. And always, always he heard the fear, the true music of mankind, the death rattle of hope. At the heart of the devastation, he found what he had come for, Tarasha Utin, Guilliman's mother, regent of Macragge in his absence, symbol of Ultramar's endurance. She was not captured easily. Guards fought and died around her. Civilians formed human shields, desperate to protect the woman they called the Mother of the Realm. It did not matter. Curze tore through them like mist. He took her alive, dragged her from her sanctuary, and with Tarasha bleeding at his feet, Curze sent a message across Macragge's fractured Vox network, a single transmission filled with static and the crackle of burning towers. Konrad Curze, low and cold. I have taken your soul, Roboute. Come and see what your order has bought. The trap was laid. Guilliman came. He arrived at the head of his honor guard, cutting through the chaos with brutal efficiency. Where the Night Lord struck, he countered. Where civilians faltered, he restored order with iron will. He was everything Curze hated, a symbol that perhaps hope could still endure, that perhaps mankind could still rise above the night. And so they met, not as warriors, not as brothers, as ideals, locked in mortal conflict. In the ruins of Magna Macraga, beneath skies choked with ash and sorrow, Guilliman faced Curze at last. The Night Haunter stood amidst a sea of corpses, Tarasha bleeding at his side, the statues of their forefathers defaced and broken. They did not speak. There were no pleas for surrender, no offers of mercy, only silent understanding. Curze struck first, fast as thought, his talons a blur. Guilliman met him with shield and sword, the force of their clash shattering what remained of the Forum's foundations. They fought like gods made flesh. Curze's attacks were wild, unpredictable, a hurricane of hate and desperation. Guilliman's defense was disciplined, relentless, a fortress of flesh and steel. Blood stained the ground anew. Their battle tore through the ruins, each blow leveling walls, collapsing bridges. For all his fury, Curze could not overcome Guilliman's precision. And for all his strength, Guilliman could not break Curze's will. At last, loyalist reinforcements swarmed the plaza. The Night Lords, seeing their leader pressed, fell upon the newcomers with suicidal abandon, buying their Primarch precious moments. Curze used them well. He did not fight to win. He fought to escape. With a final savage blow, he staggered Guilliman, tore free of the melee, and vanished into the labyrinthine ruins of Magna Macrag. The Night Lords followed, melted into the city's veins like venom. And the fires of Macrag burned for days. When order was finally restored, when the bodies were counted, and the banners raised again over broken towers, Guilliman stood silent before the ruins of the Grand Forum. He said nothing. There were no words. Curze had struck at more than walls. He had struck at the soul. Macraga had survived, but it had been wounded. A wound that would never truly heal. In the shadows beyond the stars, Konrad Curze watched and smiled, because even in defeat, he had won. Because even in survival, hope had bled. The fires of Macraga had not yet died when the lion came hunting. Eljonsen had watched the city burn, watched his brother's corruption spill across the marble streets like blood across virgin snow. He had seen hope weep, and he would not forgive. He would not forget. The lion moved through the smoldering ruins like a force of nature. His honor guard struggled to keep pace, struggling through the twisted wreckage of once proud districts. There would be no retreat this time, no speeches, no mercy. Konrad Curze had slipped through too many fingers, stained too many dreams with his rot. Here on Macrag, it would end. The trail was easy to follow. Curze made no effort to hide it. He left bodies behind him, not scattered randomly, but arranged with purpose, each grotesque display a message carved in flesh and bone. At crossroads, loyalist soldiers were found crucified, their broken bodies pointing like arrows deeper into the shattered city. In abandoned cathedrals, clergy were piled high into twisted towers, their faces frozen in expressions of endless terror. Everywhere the lion turned, the Night Haunter's signature was there, a mocking, blood-soaked dare. "Come find me." And the lion answered. He drove his forces deeper into the ruins, ignoring the ambushes, the traps, the whispered warnings from his captains. He knew Curze wanted him to follow. He didn't care. Some debts could only be paid in blood. Hour by hour, the ruins grew narrower, more twisted. The once grand avenues of Magna Macrag closed into claustrophobic warrens, labyrinths of ash and debris. Here, Curze had made his lair. Here, the final reckoning waited. The lion left his guard behind, ordering them to hold the perimeter. This was not their battle. It had never been. This was between brothers, between predators. He moved alone now, his massive frame silent despite the weight of his armor, sword drawn but held low, its edge shimmering with faint blue light. Ahead, through the choking smoke, a figure waited. Konrad Curze. The Night Haunter stood atop the ruins of a collapsed basilica, cloaked in shadow and flame. He was a ruin of a man, armor cracked and blackened, flesh torn, bones visible through rents in his chest and arms. Yet his eyes burned with an awful, undying light. The lion climbed the rubble to meet him. Neither spoke for a long time. The only sound was the distant crackle of fires, the distant sobs of a wounded city. Finally, Curze smiled, a rictus grin of blood-stained teeth. Konrad Curze, whispering, "Brother, come to share my nightmare." The lion said nothing. Words had no place here. He raised his sword in silent challenge. Curze laughed. It was not a sound of joy. It was broken glass in the throat of a dying man. And then he leapt. The battle was vicious beyond reason. Curze fought like a feral beast, his talons a blur of death, each blow fueled by hatred and despair. The lion countered with brutal, methodical precision, every strike measured to maim, to kill. Steel clashed against claw, stone shattered beneath their fury. The ruins themselves seemed to recoil from their struggle, ancient foundations crumbling underfoot. Curze was faster, wilder. He fought with the desperation of a soul that knew it was already damned. But the lion was unbreakable, patient, relentless. Curze struck low, the lion parried. Curze feinted high, the lion absorbed the blow against his pauldron and counterpunched, cracking ribs. Curze unleashed a flurry of talon strikes aimed at the throat. The lion ducked beneath them, driving his shoulder into Curze's gut with the force of a battering ram. Still the Night Haunter fought on. Blood poured from a dozen wounds. His breathing grew ragged. Yet he did not fall. He would not fall. Because he had seen this end. Because he had always known. In a final, desperate surge, Curze drove the lion back, raking a talon across his face, tearing through flesh and armor alike. The lion staggered, blood blinded him. For a moment, the Night Haunter loomed above him, talons raised for the killing blow. But hesitation flickered in Curze's eyes. A memory, a brother once, a vision of what could have been. It was all the opening the lion needed. He surged upward, blade flashing. The strike was clean. Not a killing blow, but crippling. Curze's right arm fell from his shoulder, severed at the joint. The Night Haunter recoiled, a howl of agony tearing from his throat. He fell to one knee, blood gushing from the ruin of his side. The lion stood over him, sword raised. Victory was his. But for a long moment he hesitated, because in Curze's eyes, he did not see hatred. He did not see rage. He saw acceptance. The acceptance of a man who had walked willingly into his own death. Konrad Curze, hoarse. You see it now, don't you? The truth. You cannot save them. They will tear themselves apart, with or without me. The lion's sword trembled. Curze laughed again, weaker this time. Konrad Curze, do it, brother. End it. Be the executioner they need. The lion lowered his blade, slowly, carefully, and then he turned his back on the Night Haunter. He would not kill a broken thing. He would not grant Curze the martyrdom he sought. Honor demanded more. It demanded judgment. It demanded justice. Gilliman would see to that. The Emperor would see to that. Curze slumped against the broken stones, blood soaking into the ash. He did not cry out. He simply watched as his brother walked away, his silhouette swallowed by the smoke. The lion left the ruins without speaking. His honor guard rejoined him, their expressions grim. Together they carried Curze's battered form back toward the heart of Macragge, toward a cell and a judgment yet to come. Behind them, the ruins of Magna Macragge smoldered. The fires guttered low. The echoes of the battle faded into silence, and somewhere deep within the ruins, unseen and unfelt, a final whisper lingered. There is no salvation. Only the long, slow fall into night. Chains bit into his flesh. Konrad Curze sat slumped in the darkness of his cell aboard the Red Tear, the flagship of the Blood Angels. Stasis fields hummed faintly around him, locking his broken body into a mockery of peace. He was not dead. Not yet. The Lion had seen to that. Guilliman had agreed. Sanguinius had watched, silent and solemn, as the binding runes were etched into the walls, as the psychic dampeners were activated, as the final seals were pressed into place. They would bring him to Terra. He would stand judgment before the Emperor himself. Curze laughed at the thought, a thin, broken sound, barely more than a breath. Judgment? There was no judgment to be had. He had already been judged long ago by the visions that had cursed him from birth. He closed his eyes and the images returned. Not dreams, certainties, the galaxy devouring itself, his brothers drowning in blood, the Emperor entombed on a throne that would outlast suns, and himself betrayed, broken, and murdered in the dark. There was no escaping fate, not for him, not for any of them. The ship sailed through the void, a red blade cutting across the dying light of the galaxy. Around him, the sons of Sanguinius walked with heavy steps, burdened by a sorrow they did not yet understand. They were noble souls, these blood angels, still believing in hope, still believing in honor. Fools. Curze would have pitied them if he had anything left inside capable of pity. Instead, he waited and watched, for the nightmare was not yet done. The warp stirred. It began subtly. A shiver in the Geller fields, a distortion in the astropathic choir, whispers that slid between cracks in the mind, cold and slick as oil. The fleet pressed onward, its course plotted for Terra. But the currents shifted. A storm unlike any seen before surged from the depths of the immaterium. It swallowed the stars. It tore the fleet from the material realm and cast it adrift in madness. The ruin storm, the barrier of chaos and hate that Horus had unleashed upon the galaxy. The Red Tear bucked and screamed as reality itself twisted around it. The navigators, blind and weeping blood, struggled to find safe passage. They found none. Instead, they found Davin, the poisoned world, the cradle of Horus's fall. An infected wound that pulsed in the fabric of the warp, drawing all who strayed too close. The fleet had no choice. They dropped into real space near Davin's bloated form, its skies thick with pestilence, its oceans of filth stretching wide beneath a sickly sun. The Primarchs convened. Sanguinius, Guilliman, the Lion, and Curze, a silent witness from his prison. They argued in low, grim voices. Some urged caution, others demanded answers. The ruin storm could not be passed until they understood what had birthed it. They would descend to the surface, seek out the heart of the corruption, and end it if they could. The Night Haunter smiled. He knew better. Some wounds could not be healed. Some rot was too deep. The Primarchs gathered their honor guards and made ready. Sanguinius, radiant even in his sorrow. The Lion, a dark blade of vengeance. Guilliman, the bulwark against despair. They left Curze behind, entombed in his cell, chained in stasis. But still he watched, still he knew. They descended into Davin's poisoned atmosphere, and the world welcomed them. The skies wept blood, the ground shifted and moaned beneath their tread. Warp-born beasts gibbered in the distance, their forms too fluid, too wrong to be fully seen. And at the heart of it all, the Serpent Lodge, the place where Horus had bled, where the War Master's fate had been rewritten. The Primarchs entered its shattered halls, stepping into the bones of forgotten heresies. Visions assailed them. Guilliman saw Ultramar burning, his sons betrayed. The Lion saw Caliban's betrayal, his own warriors falling to darkness. Sanguinius saw himself, broken and bleeding, before a throne of bones. Each saw their end, each saw the truth. The galaxy was already lost. Hope was a lie. Unity was a dream devoured by pride and fear. They fought their way through the temple's horrors, slaying beasts that wore the faces of their fallen brothers, resisting temptations that promised salvation at the price of everything they stood for. And when they reached the heart of the Serpent Lodge, they found only a single message carved in blood across the altar. You are already dead. There was no cure for the ruined storm, no key to salvation, only the confirmation of their doom. They returned to their ships, grim and silent, changed, broken in ways no wound could heal. Curze watched them through the psychic threads of the warp. He felt their despair like a sweet perfume. He knew it intimately. It had been his companion since birth. He whispered to them from the darkness of his cell, though they could not hear. Konrad Curze, softly. Welcome to the truth, brothers. The fleet turned away from Davin, its course set once more for Terra. But the seeds had been planted. Doubt gnawed at even the strongest hearts. The Lion questioned the cost of duty. Guilliman saw the future in ruins. Sanguinius walked with death at his side, though he still bore his wings high. And Curze smiled, not out of victory, not out of triumph. There was no joy to be found, only inevitability. The Primarchs believed they still had choices to make, battles to fight, futures to forge. But Curze knew the truth. There were no choices left, only endings. And his would come, just as he had always seen. Not on the fields of Macrage, not on the battlements of Terra, but in the dark, at the hands of an assassin, alone, as he deserved. The chains bit deeper into his flesh as he laughed in the darkness. Outside the hole of the red tear, the warp screamed, and the long, slow fall into night continued. Terra was still a distant dream when judgment came. There would be no great tribunal, no imperial court assembled beneath the banners of law and righteousness, no voice of the emperor speaking verdicts from a throne of gold. Instead, there was only the void, and the decision of 3 broken brothers. Aboard the Red Tear, in a chamber hollowed out of silence and regret, Sanguinius, the Lion, and Guilliman gathered. Their armor was battered, their faces drawn, their souls heavy with the knowledge of what they had seen on Davin. They stood around Curze's stasis cell, regarding the Night Haunter as one might a poisonous relic, something too dangerous to destroy, too poisonous to keep. The Night Lord's Primarch lay motionless within, suspended between heartbeats, a statue of agony carved in pale flesh. Even in stasis he seemed to see them. Even in silence he judged them. The Lion spoke first, his voice like a blade scraping stone. Lion L. Johnson, he cannot be brought to Terra. The words hung in the air like a corpse on a gibbet. Guilliman frowned, his hands folded behind his back. Robute Guilliman. We were charged to deliver him for trial, for justice. The Lion's eyes, cold and hard, did not waver. Lion L. Johnson. There is no justice left, only survival. Sanguinius said nothing for a long time. He stood apart, his wings drooping, his golden eyes hollow with things he dared not speak. Of them all, it was he who felt Curze's madness most keenly. It was he who understood the terrible, inescapable future that pressed upon them all. At last he spoke, Sanguinius, softly. He has already judged himself. The others turned toward him. Sanguinius, He does not resist because he knows there is no absolution, no redemption. He is not a prisoner. He is a herald. The lion shook his head. Lion L. Janssen. Then let his message end in silence. Guilliman hesitated. He was a creature of law, of structure. To act outside the Emperor's will was anathema to him. But he too had seen Davin. He too had walked through the ashes of hope. Slowly, reluctantly, he nodded. The decision was made. Curze would not see Terra. He would be cast into the void, exiled, forgotten, left to drift until fate or fortune claimed him. A death sentence by another name. And Curze welcomed it. When they deactivated the stasis field, when they stood before him in a ring of cold steel and colder oaths, he simply smiled. It was a broken thing, full of teeth and sorrow. Konrad Curze, do you think yourselves judges? You are but witnesses. I have already passed sentence upon myself. He rose, his chains clattering across the deck. The guards shifted nervously, weapons raised, but Curze made no move to resist. His broken form swayed with the motion of the ship, a scarecrow of pain and inevitability. Sanguinius stepped forward. For a moment their eyes met. A fallen angel and a broken ghost. Sanguinius, we grant you the mercy of your own prophecy. Curze chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. Konrad Curze, there is no mercy, only conclusion. They led him to the airlock. No ceremony, no last rites, only the endless hiss of the atmosphere being drawn away. Curze paused at the threshold. Beyond the hull, the void yawned wide, an endless sea of stars and darkness. A fitting tomb for a monster. He turned back one last time, looked at his brothers, at Guilliman's grim resolve, at the lion's cold wrath, at Sanguinius's sorrow, and he spoke. Konrad Curze, you think you are free of me? You are not. I will live in your fears, in your doubts, in the cracks of your perfect dreams. He stepped forward. The void claimed him. No shout, no plea, only silence. His body tumbled away from the red tear, a pale shadow swallowed by the infinite night. The airlock closed behind him with a final mechanical hiss. Inside the ship, none spoke, none celebrated. There was no victory here, only necessity. The fleet turned away, toward Terra, toward a war that would devour them all, and Konrad Curze drifted, alone, free. For the first time in his life, the visions ceased. No screams, no blood, only the cold whisper of the stars. He floated among them, weightless, timeless, a ghost unmoored from the galaxy he had cursed and bled for. And he smiled, because he knew the truth. The Emperor would fall. The Imperium would rot from within, his brothers would tear each other apart, and humanity would drown in the nightmare it had always carried within its own soul. His death would change nothing. His exile would not erase the truth. He had not failed. He had merely foretold. The stars spun around him, vast and indifferent. He drifted through broken debris fields, past shattered hulls of ancient ships, through storms of cosmic dust and silent meteor showers. Decades passed, centuries. He did not die, not yet. The same twisted destiny that had birthed him, that had cursed him with sight beyond sanity, sustained him even now. He slept in fits and starts, dreams as cold and empty as the void itself, waiting. For what, he did not know. Or perhaps he did. Perhaps some part of him understood that the end he had seen was still ahead, that the final chapter of his existence had yet to be written, that even now fate moved unseen through the currents of the galaxy, drawing together threads too vast for mortal minds to comprehend. He dreamed of a world of ghosts, a fortress of silence, a death not at the hands of an army or a brother, but of something smaller, quieter, inevitable. The assassin was coming, not today, not tomorrow, but soon. And Konrad Curze would not resist, because in the end, death was not a punishment. It was a release. And so he drifted, through the ashes of empires, through the dying light of suns, through the endless, waiting dark. A sentence not of hate, not of vengeance, but of truth. And the stars watched, silent and eternal, as the Night Haunter awaited his final dawn. He fell through the stars for a long, long time, not falling in the way men fall, but drifting, endless and slow, wrapped in the frozen silence of the void. Konrad Curze, the Night Haunter, killer of dreams, floated through the graveyard of the galaxy. Forgotten. Almost. The cosmos did not forget him. No, it conspired to draw him back to the living. A scavenger ship, the Shelled Rune, plying the old, abandoned lanes between dead worlds, stumbled across a signal, faint, nearly lost beneath the radiation storms that swept the sector. Curious, greedy, foolish. The crew of the Shelled Rune changed course, dreaming of forgotten treasures, lost relics, derelict war machines, vaults untouched by human hands for centuries. Instead, they found him, encased in a cocoon of frozen rime and broken armor. His body drifted among shattered wreckage, unmoving but not dead, a relic of another age. They brought him aboard. They should have left him. The medici teams worked in ignorance, cutting away the ice, restoring warmth to broken veins, reactivating a heart that should have ceased long ago. The stasis fields cracked, and Curze awoke. The Shelled Rune's Vox logs recorded what happened next, though no one survived to tell the tale. Darkness fell across the ship within an hour. Hull lights shattered. Life support failed. Crew members vanished from their posts. When the security teams found them, they were displayed like grotesque trophies, limbs arranged into sigils, their faces frozen in final expressions of terror. The ship's captain, a woman hardened by decades of frontier salvaging, attempted to rally her crew. Her last transmission dissolved into screams. The Shelled Rune became a mausoleum. The few who survived the first culling found themselves hunted, trapped within the narrowing steel corridors as the Night Haunter moved among them like a wraith. No alarms were raised, no distress beacons sounded. The ship simply fell silent, another ghost drifting through a galaxy that had already buried too many. But Curze spared one. M'Shen, a Kalidas assassin embedded among the crew by an Imperial agency that still dared to dream of justice. She alone evaded his initial onslaught, moving with the chameleonic grace of her temple, hiding in the corners even the Night Haunter overlooked. He knew she was there. Of course he knew. He let her run. Because this was the final act, the end he had foreseen. He would not deny it. Instead, he played out the last steps of the dance he had begun long ago. He took another survivor, a navigator's mate named Elver, and forced him into service. Not through threats, not through violence, through the slow, suffocating terror that only Konrad Curze could wield. Elver, trembling and broken, piloted the Shelled Rune at Curze's command. Their destination was already chosen, Zagwalsa, a world forgotten by Imperial charts, abandoned after the Horus Heresy, its surface blasted by war and left to rot in the silent dark. A fitting place for an ending. The journey took years, long, terrible years. Elver aged before his time, hounded by dreams not his own, visions of blood and judgment whispered into his ears by the Night Haunter. He begged for death more than once. Curze denied him every time. The assassin watched, waited, bided her time. Curze spoke often during those endless days, not to Elver, not to M'Shen, to the stars, to himself, to the dreams that would not die. He spoke of the Emperor, the father who had cast him adrift. He spoke of his brothers who had feared him but never understood him. He spoke of Nostramo and the cries of a people who needed monsters more than heroes. He spoke of endings, of acceptance. By the time they reached Zagwalsa, Elver was little more than a shell, a puppet whose strings had worn thin. Curze let him go, a final mercy. The Sheldrune came to rest in the shadow of a mountain of rusted ruins, the remnants of an ancient fortress, its battlements crumbling under a starless sky. Here Curze made his lair. He did not rebuild, he did not fortify, he simply waited. In the broken halls, among the ghosts of 1,000 dead wars, he made a throne from scrap and bone. He wore no crown, he held no court. He waited, patient as the grave. The assassin followed. It was not a game anymore. It was ritual, a prophecy fulfilled. As she stalked him through the ruins, Mishen found no traps, no guards, no defenses. Only the weight of inevitability pressing down with every step. And Curze, seated upon his throne, waiting. He did not rise. He did not draw a blade. He simply looked at her and smiled. Konrad Curze, quietly, "You have come at last." The assassin raised her weapon. No hesitation, no doubt. She had been trained for this moment her entire life. But still, she hesitated for a heartbeat, a single flicker of uncertainty. At the sight of him, he was not a monster, not anymore. He was a man hollowed out by fate, already dead in all ways but the final breath. Konrad Curze, I know my sins. I know my sentence. I welcome it. The shot rang out. A single clean shot. No spectacle. No drama. Curze slumped forward, his final breath a whisper lost to the broken winds of Zagwalsa. And the galaxy shuddered, though no one felt it, as one of its darkest truths slipped quietly into death. The assassin lowered her weapon. There were no cheers, no triumph, only silence. She left him there, alone among the ruins, a forgotten king on a forgotten throne. Curze had not fought his death. He had embraced it, because he had always known. The darkness was not something he had created. It had always been there, in the stars, in the Imperium, in mankind itself. He had merely been the one cursed to see it clearly. And now, at last, he was free. The Night Haunter was dead. But his legacy was not. Across the cold, uncaring galaxy, the Night Lords endured. Not as a legion, not as an army bound by banners and honor. They endured as phantoms, as murderers, as the final echo of a broken dream. In the days that followed Curze's death, the remnants of his legion splintered beyond all hope of unity. Without their Primarch, there was no guiding hand to shape their terror. No vision to restrain their hunger. The warbands that had once answered to his whispers scattered to the void, carving their own paths through blood and ash. Some fled into the eye of terror, seeking sanctuary among the gods they had once scorned. Others haunted the edges of imperial space, raiders and butchers, feeding on the weak and the desperate. None sought redemption. None sought forgiveness. They were past such things. They were predators now, in truth and in soul. Sevatar, once the first captain, once Curze's right hand, had been lost before the end. Last seen leading a suicidal boarding action against the loyalists at Istvan Thi, his final fate unknown. Talos, the soul hunter, wandered the dark between the stars, his visions as cursed as his father's, guiding shattered warbands in doomed campaigns of vengeance. Some among the Night Lords tried to rebuild, to forge new dominions from the bones of dying empires, but most understood the truth. They were relics, ghosts, in a galaxy that had no place left for them. The Imperium of the 41st millennium, bloated and rotting, remembered them only as monsters whispered about in the dark. Parents warned their children, "Be good, or the Night Lords will come for you." Hive cities, isolated and crumbling, painted lightning bolts across their hab blocks to ward off the shadows. Astropaths wept and went mad when a Night Lord's fleet slipped into a system, heralded by vox screams and blood-stained stars. To many, they were no longer even real. Just stories. Just fear itself, given shape and armor. And that suited the Night Lords well. They thrived in fear. They fed on it. They needed no cause beyond cruelty, no strategy beyond terror. They struck without warning, without pattern. A mining colony on the edge of Segmentum Tempestus would find its entire population crucified along the ridgeline, not for conquest, but for art. An agri-world that failed to meet its tithes would awaken to find its governors flayed alive in their own banquet halls. An Imperial frigate, isolated during warp transit, would find its Geller fields sabotaged. The Night Lords waiting within the ensuing demonic storm, harvesting souls for reasons known only to themselves. No world was too small, no victory too hollow. Every act of terror was a sermon in Curze's name, even if most among the Night Lords never spoke of him again. For though he was gone, he remained. In the way they moved through the dark, in the way they hunted, not for survival, but because hunting was all they understood. In the way they turned every battle into a spectacle of despair, in the long, slow death of hope, wherever they passed. The galaxy itself seemed to mirror their decay. The Imperium, stretched thin and brittle, was a mockery of the shining empire the Emperor had dreamed of. Corruption was endemic. Fear ruled in place of faith. Bureaucracy choked every corner of human endeavor. What Curze had seen was true. What he had forewarned had come to pass. The Night Lords had been monsters, yes, but they had also been prophets. Mankind could not be saved, only ruled through fear. And so, in a strange, terrible way, the Night Lords had won. Their vision was the galaxy's reality, and they laughed in the void, cloaked in the screams of the dying, as humanity stumbled onward toward its inevitable grave. Still, not all among the Night Lords were content with mere slaughter. Some remembered, some hated, some believed a greater vengeance was yet to come. They whispered of a final night, a last crusade of terror, a time when the scattered warbands would converge once more, not to rebuild, not to reclaim, but to bring the galaxy to its knees one last time. No banners, no thrones, only the long night swallowing the stars. Perhaps it was madness. Perhaps it was just another lie they told themselves, but in the places where the Imperium's light flickered weakly, in the derelict hives and abandoned stations, in the dead zones where no beacon shone, the Night Lords gathered, slowly, patiently, waiting. For in the end they were not sons of the Emperor, they were sons of Curze, sons of Nostramo, sons of fear, and fear never truly dies. It waits, it festers, it grows, one whispered breath at a time, one nightmare at a time, one murdered hope at a time. In the deepest nights of the far future, when the Emperor's Imperium drowns in war and madness, the Night Lords still come. From the cold blackness between the stars, from the broken ruins of memory, from the nightmares of those who cling to life in a galaxy that no longer has room for hope. They come, lightning clawed, blood spattered, silent, inevitable, a legacy not of conquest, nor empire, nor glory, but of terror, a terror that endures across 10,000 years and will endure for 10,000 more. Because while kings and worlds and dreams may die, fear is forever, and the Night Lords are its eternal heralds.